Welcome, folks, to the latest edition of our Coaches Connect call. I'm Coach Jeremy, and we have a full house today and a full schedule with a few discussions to help our coaches move forward with their business, with their coaching situations. Again, anything coaching related, PN related is fair game in this call, but we do have a little bit of an agenda here. And actually, one of the conversations that we were looking to tackle regarding new coaches and the first few actions to take with their clients. One of our members is here to kind of lead that conversation. So, Coach Jeanette, welcome. Thank you for bringing your conversation to the Coaches Connect call. Maybe you want to give us a little bit more background about what it is you were seeking with your post, and then I'll fill in the gaps for the other conversation that I kind of paired with this because they have some similarities.
All right.
Unless Coach Marilyn is also here, and then I'll take her in as well.
Oh, okay.
Yep, floor is yours.
I'm Jeanette, Sweat with Jeanette, and I recently completed my first bikini fitness competition. So I think I'm officially a level 3 client. And did all that through calorie and protein tracking. The peak week was all the macros tracking. And it definitely inspired a lot of my personal community to be like, what are you doing? Let me know, coach me. And so I'm running with this momentum and just this is not PN, but I just dove into macro tracking with them, like calories and protein. And after a few weeks of struggling, realized, oh, wow, that's too much. So I went back to my PN books, and I want to start at their level. And so I'm backpedaling, and they're happy to still keep working with me. And now I'm just like inundated with all the data and the different habits, and wondering if your approach from your experience coaches is to just go in the order that it's presented in the PN book, or do you give a few choices and have your clients choose what habit they want to start with? Just starting from the very beginning here.
Awesome. So just to kind of summarize that question, it sounds like you're looking for guidance in terms of which practices do you begin with clients. Initially, you kind of shot for some things that were applicable to you and your experience and tried to translate to the clients who maybe didn't have the same capability or the same understanding of nutrition that you possessed. And that seems like a little too high. So now you're kind of going back to the basics and looking for what is an appropriate order to start your practices with clients. Does that
Yeah.
sound about right?
Yeah. And I'm also looking for clarity on like there's skills and then core practices. And it seems like each, skill has several core practices, and then there's an order of the top hits of skills. Um, and I'm, ready to deliver. I just wonder what the recommendation is as far as approach of order habits, and if that's skills and core practices in that order as well.
Gotcha. Good question. So, coaches, we're opening it up to you here. I have some thoughts, but I'm curious to know any feedback for Coach Jeanette here. Is there a specific order that you potentially use with your clients? Um, do you ever change that order? What does it look like in your coaching situation?
So I'll offer my own disclaimer. I'm new to this group. Um,
Mhm.
and I just started the nutrition course. Chapter 10 is where I'm at right now. And similar to Sweat with Jeanette, I did my first bikini competition last August, doing one this August, and same questions. What can I do? And I already know what I do is not what most people are going to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of in the same boat with you as people want my advice, they want my guidance. I don't know where to start. I do have a neighbor who is showing a level of commitment. Is she going to weigh and prep her foods? Probably not. she likes her social life, she likes her weekends, and there's a lot of social sacrifices there. So I don't know where to start either. But I do know I'm kind of doing little baby steps right now, just to get the feel for things. But I'm here also looking for, what's that formula look like? What's that playbook look like for 90% of the people that aren't going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, lift weights, walk a certain amount of steps every day, weigh your food, all the things that are overwhelming for the average person who just wants to get healthy and feel better about themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll say that very useful that you both have come to the awareness that, hey, the thing that works for me and the strategies that I use may not be appropriate for everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that that is a great starting point to work from. Uh, Coach Megan, a seasoned vet here, you have your hand up. What
Yeah.
do you have to add to this discussion?
This is kind of how I approach it. I paint a big picture, like after I understand what their goals are, and say, okay, in order to achieve that, here's what that might look like, and improving your food, adding some movement, kind of painting the different aspects. Usually they already kind of have an idea of what they want to work on. More often, I feel like they have already started something or thought about something and just need a little guidance on how to approach it. So after I paint that big picture, say, okay, so here's where we want to be. I don't expect you to have it all knocked out next week, but is there anything in there that you feel like you'd like to start working on or prioritizing? And then we'll look at it together and figure out how to break it down into something that feels achievable.
Excellent. Thank you, Coach. Jeanette, does that give you some guidance there?
So just to recap, so I understand, is you're letting them describe to you what it is they want to work on, and then from there you have them, you clarify, you choose one together, or are you mapping out the things that are you mapping out choices, or are you giving the choices based on what they've talked about?
Yeah. So not everybody's goal is the same. Not everybody wants to be a bikini model or compete. So understanding like what their objective is and where they want to be and what picture that might look like to get there, and knowing, like, say they just want to lose a little bit of weight or lower their A1C. And so you have a different path for everybody. So you might know the steps and the different objective to hit to reach those goals. And so you might paint that, okay, this is some things that you could do to move towards that goal. So like if a client came to me and they wanted to lose 20 to 30 pounds, okay, ultimately we all know you have to create a calorie deficit, but that's can be overwhelming. So here are some things that you can do. Is we need to increase your movement or change some of your eating habits and look at that. We can look at your sleep too, and just kind of painting like, here's where in a perfect world, all these things you could work on. Does any of those feel like you're ready to tackle anything where you might have heard the ready, willing, and able phrase?
Yeah, I just downloaded the worksheet or bookmarked it.
Yeah, so see, kind of gauging their interest in any of those, seeing which of those they might be capable of tackling at that point would be my starting point.
Right, but then what are you plugging into to see what are they ready, willing, and able to do? Just like you would toss out some ideas and then have them pick one and then ask them ready, willing, and able. I'm getting very granular because
Yeah.
trying to figure it out like step by step.
Yeah, I do better with specific examples. So I'm struggling like big picture.
I can give an example.
Let's do that.
So the typical woman, professional, maybe mom, and she wants to lose like 10 to 15 pounds, maybe by a certain date, like in 2 months, and like or wants to just feel the way she used to feel. So that's basically the avatar. And what I'm thinking, I like what you said, Megan, like I can think of those things. I can think of like, okay, we're going to want to make healthier choices. I can come off the top of my head with those. But then when I went to the PN book, I was like, oh, wait, I got to even back up more and have them build the habit of planning time and prioritizing, planning and prioritizing. That's like step one. And
Yeah.
then it's like eating to 80%, eating mindfully, eating slowly. And that's step two. So I'm like, am I really going that far back? I can, and I just wanted to know, like, in practice, what y'all are doing. And also, like, there's that worksheet of like level one habit assessment. Do you have them fill that out so that you can confirm that they're level one and then start with those two things that I just said, which are the level one first steps, first
Yeah.
habit?
So really trying to navigate, like, do I follow this process
Yes,
step by
that's
step?
what I'm asking.
Yeah, I remember having the exact like conundrum in my early coaching years is like, how do I navigate this? Um, from experience, I've had maybe a handful of clients who actually want to start on eating slow. So that's usually not where we start. I try to find something that a middle ground where they're gonna see some results and get some motivation in order to open that up. I paint the picture to include that down the road, like kind of plug that, 'cause most people aren't open to it when I coach them at first, at least my clientele. So I paint that picture, all the possibilities. In PN2, you get kind of the skills, actions in different areas to work on, which is really helpful. And so like you have nutrition and then you kind of have how you eat and what you eat. So you have the how, the slow eating and mindfulness, and then you also have what you eat. So you can break it down even further. But say like this client, this mom wants to lose weight, I would gauge, okay, does she want to work on her movement or her nutrition first? Like usually people have a good idea of what they feel like they should be doing. And we start there. And then we break it down to the smallest achievable step that they're capable of by having conversations, finding out what they've done in the past, what they feel like they should work on, knowing that big picture, like, hey, we need to increase protein, we need to look at these different aspects. Where can I meet you to help you get there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So what I'm hearing is that you can just use a little bit more of your coach common sense and relating to the person. And really from PN, it's the methodology of pick one thing and whatever resources, worksheets maybe relate to that you can send over. Otherwise it's holding them accountable one, with a couple check-ins, and then 2 weeks later assessing, do we move on? Have you mastered it? And then going from there versus me being so specific to the academics of how PN said to do it.
Yeah, because you're working with humans.
Yeah, that's better for me. I mean, I feel like everyone's so different that I don't want to just make it so like dry or cookie cutter or rigid.
Yeah, those are good instincts.
Cool. I'm going to toss to Coach Charlie. Charlie, what do you have to add to this discussion?
Oh, um, I'll caveat by saying that I'm very early on in my coaching journey, but having started out, oh, bear with me, my computer's freezing. Very helpful. Can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've only worked with a couple of clients, and I'm sort of similar to you. I've not done a bodybuilding show or anything like that, but I did go through my own journey of like quite substantial weight loss. I track calories and I was all protein intake and stuff. And I work very I'm very like numbers oriented and detail oriented. So if someone said to me like do this, I wouldn't think not to do it. I'd just do it. And so it's definitely been a learning curve coming to work with people where actually the majority of people don't turn around and just implement it. Is smaller steps. They aren't willing to change everything at once. But what I found with just a couple of clients is that I wanted almost that rigid approach that you were sort of explaining, where you have the same order of steps, that sort of playbook, And the reality is, like Megan said, everyone's different, and you just run the risk of like stressing yourself out by trying to enforce this sort of dogmatic approach. And one thing that I found that has worked a little bit better is doing like an assessment week. So getting a client to just fill out what they're currently doing, and then you can have a little look. So that's with respect to movement, food, and stuff like that. And then just reviewing that, and you can often identify like really low-hanging fruit that you can just start on and build some motivation, and then sort of go from there. So I had a client recently that was tracking all of their nutrition, for example, and it got to the end of the week, and you think, oh, like what's something they're going to be willing to do? And it turned out that they misunderstood the calories in squash that they were drinking, and it was like 10 times the amount of calories that they were having each day. So that's like a 300 calorie that they weren't accounting for. And if you start making smart swaps and things like that, it's a very easy change for them to make.
What were they
And
miscalculating? The calories in squash?
yeah, so they were logging so for example, I was gauging, I get an idea of how willing they are to track just for a week. And if they're willing to track, then that's what I'd get them to do. If not, then I just get them to fill out a food diary. But this client was willing to track. They were logging, say, 100 mil of squash, thinking that it was neat squash. But actually the calories were for dilute squash. So they were logging, say, 34 calories or something like that, but it was actually 340 calories for every liter that they were drinking. So, you can get to the end of the week and go, there's all these complicated changes that you can suggest. But actually, why don't we start here? Like, why don't you swap this for like a sugar-free squash or something like that? And then
Charlie, I'm gonna pause for a second. Is squash in the UK different than squash
Yeah, I
in
was
the
like,
rest of the world? They're just
squash is a
drinking ground up
vegetable.
gourds?
I'm
Are
trying to think
drinking
what I'm trying to think what you would
squash
call it.
juice?
It's like
A lot of squash,
so we so
300
we would
calories.
call we would call juice like pure fruits juice. Like, what would you
Okay,
have that you put in a glass, like a small amount, and then top it up with water? What do you call that?
probably still juice, I would say.
What's
And that's why. Why is that not confusing?
wait, what's the fruit? It's a fruit?
No, so it's a drink.
Oh, it's a drink called
So
squash.
it's a dilute. So it's a type of drink. So I'm guessing what you're
Okay,
Or
calling
like
I,
a
I
you're
think I
calling it
know.
concentrated,
juice.
like concentrated
Yeah, yeah,
juice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
it's like a
okay.
juice concentrate.
Phew. I was like, wow, people in the UK are just drinking pure gourds. How
I
how
mean, some people
adventurous.
might be.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now we're all on board. But it sounds like essentially your plan initially working with someone is if we don't have a clear pathway forward, I'm going to give them a week to kind of assess some of their own behaviors and then ask them, hey, based on this, on what you've captured, on the awareness that you've been developing, where do you think it makes sense for you to make changes? And the thing that bubbled up here, which you would have not intuitively known as a coach, was them saying, hey, I'm drinking this high calorie drink, and I didn't realize how high calorie it was. This is maybe where I can make some changes. And you just had to sit there and shake your head and go, yeah, that clearly seems like a good place to make some changes. So you didn't have to have like magical wizard powers and look into this person's brain and soul to figure this out. You just gave them the space to come to the table and say, hey, what do you want to change? Where do you see room for improvement? And then they were able to make those decisions.
Mm. I like it because it's obviously everyone's different. And it allows you to sort of future pace as well because it brought up a few other things. Like once I had a little look at what they recorded, you could see that they weren't really eating very much protein, or they weren't getting enough, like very many veggies in, like that sort of thing. So all things that you can build on down the line, but so as not to overwhelm at the start. It was like quite a nice way of doing it.
Yeah,
But yeah.
fantastic. And we learned a new word today. So
Wow.
good all around. So I'll throw in my 2 cents here as well
Okay.
in terms of where do we start? So this is a question that comes up in this conversation or in this community a whole bunch. Like what is a a valuable way to start, or what is the way to start. So it's worth recognizing based on the feedback you've gotten so far. There is no one best way to start, but depending on the coaching avatar, the coaching kind of profile that you provide, there may be easier ways for you to start. So you could have your own coaching playlist depending on who's the client that I work with, and then how similar are my clients from individual to individual. So common playlists for a lot of folks typically starts with something like, if we're trying to build awareness, it's often more useful to try and narrow that scope. So we can say, let's track our protein intake. It has broad application for a lot of folks. Typically seeing increased protein intake has better benefits for body composition recovery and a whole bunch of things. So that is an area that we can start. From a food behavior standpoint, typically look at it as slow eating opens the door to those other behaviors. It is just a matter of how ready, willing, and able is a person to start with eating behaviors. So as an example, a lot of my coaching has to do with eating behaviors with the clients that I work with. So slow eating is normally an easier entry point onto our eating behavior kind of journey. Of course, there's other things where it's like you can pick other domains like sleep, movement, stress, and then just understanding what are some of the easier entry points for folks to get in there based on the conversations that you're having with them. So you can probably pick one or two that make a little bit more sense for you. The way that I tend to look at kind of the first week of coaching is there's three things that I want to establish. Number one is I'm looking to get the client to start tracking and understanding their experience. So it actually doesn't matter what practice we use, as long as they feel like it's relevant to them and they are capable of tracking that experience in some quantifiable way. So if we choose protein, if we choose slow eating, if we choose create and maintain your minimums from a movement perspective, whatever we're doing, they're like, okay, cool. Every day I can log into ProCoach. I can capture a little bit of my experience, and then they can share it with me, their coach. So it's meaningful to them. They're able to capture their experience. And then the third thing that I need them to do is be able to share it with me. So whatever app we're using, I tend to favor ProCoach. This is me shilling for ProCoach. And yeah, it's very easy for them to input data there. So those are the only three things that I need to capture for a practice to be reasonable in that kind of first period. If I go with something too aggressive and it's like I've overloaded them with data capturing, it gives them too many things to do, or it's not relevant to them, then we've missed the mark. And it's kind of going to be more challenging for me to now navigate this experience forward with the client because they're like, wow, this is already too hard. I actually don't really care about the things that we're tracking. And I, as a coach, don't have any insight into what I'm doing. So if I satisfy those three qualities, any practice can work. There are some practices that are easier to satisfy those qualities. I call them normally anything that is easy to quantify. I call it my tactical and practical practices. So I can say, what is the number of units here? How often did they do the thing? Is it a yes or no? Whereas slow eating tends to be a little bit more challenging, and those are my behavioral practices. These ones can look very different in different situations, and they can still be successful in a variety of settings, but the actual effort itself can look very different. So those ones I tend to save for weeks 2+, once we've already gotten some rapport going. Does that make sense?
What are the three qualities that you want?
Sure. So I want it to be something that they feel is relevant to them.
Okay.
So it's like I can ask a client to track their fluid intake, but they're like, I drink a whole bunch of water. I have tea regularly. I'm never really thirsty. That wouldn't be a good quality or a good practice for me to ask. So it has to be relevant to them and the problem that they're trying to solve.
Okay.
Number two is it has to be something that they can quantify in their experience. They can build their awareness towards the thing. So if we're talking body composition, protein tends to fit the goal quite well often because it's quite easy and relevant for folks to realize, oh, I've heard that I should eat more protein. I think when I look at my diet, like, yeah, I probably need more protein. Coaches in the past have told me that I need to eat more protein. This is something that we can begin to track. So it's relevant to their experience. They can capture the data on it. And then third, they can share that data with me. So there's some way for us to facilitate this. So either they're using ProCoach, they're using some sort of tracking sheet, they're using MyFitnessPal, and I'm able to gain insight into the thing they're doing. And those are the three things that I want to be able to hit early in our relationship. And I tell my clients this when we're looking at the list of potential practices, uh, which I curate based on their intake form in ProCoach. I'll look through the skills assessment, notice based on our previous conversations if we've had any back and forth already. I'll highlight a small list of things, tell them, hey, here are the ones that I think fit best within the first week. Then it's up to them to choose. So there's room for them to have their own input. I just narrow the scope a little bit because if I show them a list of 44 potential things we can work on, that's just crazy town. These people are going to be like, what the hell? How do I choose something here?
Okay, so
So
I missed the beginning part of that. You said that you do narrow down, you assess based on your assessment of them, you narrow down a list, a short list of a few choices for them
exactly. Yeah,
to.
and I mean, this is why I paired your conversation with Coach Marilyn's conversation as well, because they were asking which assessment forms should I send. So this is again, both of your conversations. I think Pro Coach would be beneficial to help with not only capturing information, which is more Coach Marilyn's concern in terms of data assessment prior to working with a client, but for your benefit as well, uh, using that data to populate the skills assessment and then seeing which areas would potentially be useful for us to begin working with, which then logically leads into you selecting a few practices to pre-populate for that client to look at. And then when it comes down to that first week or that first session that you have with them, you now have your playlist that is custom built for that client. You will notice if you keep doing this over a while, there are some practices where it's like, I don't really even need to look at the skills assessment. I just know that the majority of people are likely going to benefit from this. Eat
Mhm.
enough protein is almost always on my list.
Mhm.
Some eating behavior is almost always on my list as well, which is eat slowly or eat until satisfied. Almost always make it based on the population that I work with and the work that I do. Create and maintain minimums, almost always useful for me on my list. Step count is something that I talk about with clients a whole bunch. So being able to gather an activity profile for them and understand what does movement look like in their day to day, that's normally where we capture that. So there are a few, as you mentioned, kind of like heavy hitters that will always populate my list. Uh, doesn't matter who I'm really working with, but there's also room for individuality based on what I see on the skills assessment. And then the final call I tend to give to the client to say, hey, here are maybe 5 things that we can work on for week one. Here are the 3 qualities that any practice that we're working on needs to satisfy. What do you think makes sense here? What is relevant to you? What do you feel capable of tracking? And then do you feel capable of sharing that tracking with me? If any of these 5 things here make sense for you, let's pick one of them to start. And
Yeah.
then once they've picked that one, I will say, if you have room for a second, what would it look like? Knowing that we don't need to go for a second. Some folks will say, yeah, I want a little bit more challenge. Let's pick a second. Others will say, you know what? I feel comfortable starting with this, and that's perfect.
Okay, great. That selection process I get now. And then
Cool.
you stay in that for 1 to 2 weeks?
We can stay in that as long as needed, but the quality that we're looking for in the first 2 weeks, independent of the actual practice itself, is just the ability for us to communicate and for them to build their awareness of whatever it is we're working on.
Yeah.
So for a lot of those folks, like that initial practice might stick around for a few months uh, until they feel like me tracking my practice is not actively changing my behavior anymore.
Mm.
So eat enough proteins, like I do it now. Whether I hit that I had 6 servings of protein or not, I'm going to do it regardless. There's no future benefit for additional tracking. It doesn't help me guide the behavior. We can take it off.
Okay, I love
And I
this.
don't need to know about it. So great, we can take it off.
Are you able to effectively do this all remotely, or do you require a video or a phone call conversation?
If
I
you're
know,
asking about
yeah.
my coaching approach, I
Yes.
use quite a high touch coaching approach. So I
Mm.
meet with people weekly, virtually, of course, but I do it every week. either in a video call, phone call, and then as our backup, an asynchronous check-in where I'll send them some questions based on the data that I see or our previous conversations, and then they'll respond either before we meet next or we'll just bring it up in our part of our next conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully that gives you some insight into kind of where do you start. Uh, Certainly have a playlist if you have similarities in the people that you're working with, things that you know will likely have high levels of impact and are, I would encourage you to choose things that are also easier to track, but that is kind of up to you if that's part of your coaching approach. Add in some things that really show the client, hey, based on our conversation or what I gathered from the information I took from you, here's something that I think would also be valuable to you. Uh, and if it's something that they had kind of been considering in the background, but didn't see how they could apply it, that actually tends to be quite useful. It shows, hey, this coach is thinking about me as an individual, but they're thinking about me when I'm not directly in front of them. They've put in some work ahead of time, and it really helps to build that relationship. Uh, and then, as often as possible, as Charlie mentioned, and as Megan mentioned as well, allowing the client to make a choice and guide that process shows that you also trust their intuition and that you're willing to work by being alongside them as opposed to follow my playlist, do as I say.
Yeah.
Bernadette, you have your hand up.
I have a question about
Please.
ProCoach. Is there some type of demo of ProCoach just for those who don't use it to see what it looks like? And
Yeah,
what
when I'll pop it into the chat box in a second, but I can share a demo video. It's a little bit long, but it'll walk you through all the things.
Okay. Yeah, it could be long. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it like, is it,
Pardon me?
is it like PN's solution to Trainerize?
So essentially it evolved from PN we've always had our own coaching programs for the last like 15 plus years. And then initially it was directly the exact program that PN coaching delivers over a 12-month period. We just gave that to coaches and we said, here, go. Essentially, here's the tracks. Now you're the train. You go as far as you want to go with it. We've remodeled it to be more plug and play. So it's geared towards more individual one-on-one coaching, and you can select the practices. So if you've looked at kind of V4 of our L1 nutrition or SSR programs, the model looks a lot more similar to current version of ProCoach, where there's the goals to skills to practices to action model is there. Our skill trees are filled out with most of the same practices. It follows a lot of the same logic.
And this is for clients to use as well. It would be like,
Yeah, so it's for coaches to use with their clients. So
Okay.
you own the account and then you invite your clients to work with you. And ProCoach is essentially a way for you to assign them practices, for them to capture their experience, and then you to see that data to make updated and informed decisions when you're working with them and to inform your conversations with them. And it's meant to be kind of like as easy as possible to navigate without having a whole bunch of clumsy features.
and it can deliver nutrition and training.
There is training components to it, but you cannot put in customized training. So
Okay.
if you're not interested in writing programming for your clients, it's fantastic. It fits about, I would say, 80 to 90% of my clients. I can just give them a ProCoach program and I don't have to worry about writing programming for hours. And then the other 10% of my clients who want programming, they're normally like have a very specific requirement, and that's why they want me to write programming for them. Or they're just like willing to pay for it, and that's something that they value.
Yeah,
Even though I keep trying to tell them just take the ProCoach program.
but that will go beyond the scope of ProCoach.
Yeah, I can't do customized programming on ProCoach. I use Trainerize for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bernadette.
I think you just answered my question, but let me see. I was going to ask, is there a reason why you would never use ProCoach with a client? And I think you just answered that, correct?
Yeah, so the clients who, uh, if I'm doing any health coaching with them that doesn't require specific programming, then they're pro coach.
Mhm.
If they are someone who's like, I'm just doing programming for them and they want individualized programming, then I'll put them on trainer eyes.
Okay. Okay, so like if you have a particular niche, it should fulfill for most of the clients within that niche, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. Kimberly, you were in on this conversation as well. Do you have what you need there? Any further questions from you?
Well, I guess I'm also looking for an app right now too. So uh, am I the Kimberly that you called on? I don't know if there's other Kimberly.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, but I think I understand the pro coach, you cannot customize any specific workouts. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's modification within the workouts. Like there's a drop down button. Clients can choose a harder variation or an easier variation, or they can change variations based on equipment to some degree. But you cannot write like a custom 6 week program for a client and insert or delete your own exercises.
Okay. All right.
Cool. Uh, Kim, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Um, I remember you gave a Pro Coach demo, and I personally like Pro Coach a lot more. I started using Coach Catalyst just because I'm starting out with
Mhm.
having clients and I wanted to, have a low cost up front. But question is, I know Pro Coach has those movement programs that you said. Coach Catalyst, it doesn't. I think you kind of have to like program it. Where is the boundary lie if you're not certified in training, but you also want to encourage movement with somebody? Like, do you recommend creating those like programs if I'm using like Coach Catalyst, or like I guess how does that like work?
So, I mean, from a legal standpoint, you'll want to probably first clarify within the region that you live, is there any qualification required to give programming? So to act as kind of a personal trainer. In a lot of places, there is not. I live in Ontario, Canada. You do not need any designated qualification to call yourself a personal trainer or to act as a personal trainer. Is it useful to get certified as a personal trainer? Hell yeah, because you will learn a lot of the principles of exercise design and programming. If you are someone who's like, I don't really have an interest in that, but I want to support my clients with more movement options, I would encourage you to just help them find a program online and be like, hey, if you want to find a program that appeals to you, here are some prompts that you can use to get ChatGPT to create it. Here are some prompts you can use in a search engine, see what comes up, and then we can sit down and review it together. And you can tell me what feels appealing to you about it, what may feel challenging, and then you could potentially help guide them through that process. Uh,
Okay.
in terms of writing programming for a client, if that's a skill set that you're developing and you can let them know, hey, I'm still working on doing this. I'm not or I don't have professional experience here, but I think I can do this for you. Is that something you're willing to be my guinea pig for? Then you can go ahead from there. You still may want to get them to sign something like a PAR-Q or PAR-Med-X, depending on which population they belong to. But having some sort of guidance there is something you'll probably want to have some sort of legal waiver if you are taking on more responsibility on that front.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
But just to follow up with that, but if it was Pro Coach and because it has the suggested movements, that's okay to use.
Yeah, you can give them that program, tell them
Mhm.
very similar like how you would share a meal plan with someone. This is not something that you have to follow to the letter. This is an example of what you can do. It's a resource, just like they can Google something online and find a workout. You can share that and say, hey, here's your sample workout. Feel free to follow it as closely as you would like.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Uh, that was a longer and sprawling conversation there, but hopefully one that is useful for new coaches. The tie-in there is sign up for Pro Coach, and it will solve a lot of your problems. And I say that half joking, half seriously, in that if you have a system that can take off a lot of the initial wonder and worry for coaches, so data gathering and organization for your thought process or your coaching framework, it is very useful to start with something like that. Will it meet all of your needs as an evolving coach and as you add new skill sets or as you change focus? Maybe not. And in that case, you'll need to search out and source a new software. But I think for the majority of PN coaches starting out, starting with Pro Coach gives you a battle tested framework that is easy for you to navigate and easy for your clients to navigate. And that's incredibly important, more so than any one individual feature, unless, of course, customized programming is your bread and butter. Then I'll stop shilling for Pro Coach.
Natural follow-up is how much is Pro Coach and is there a trial period available?
Yeah. So there's a free 30-day trial that you can start with. And then from there, it is $99 USD per month for 0 to 20 clients. And then the cost scales as your client roster increases. I think it increases by like $50 a month for every additional 50 clients.
And we are set up on this, like you said, like train track, the PN train track, and then the forms are all available as well. Like
yeah, it reduces the number of forms that you need to send because the intake is so comprehensive that you likely won't send a whole bunch of additional forms. You'll just be gathering data as you work with your client. So you can send additional L1 forms if you would like to. I very rarely do. I tend to operate under the understanding that adults don't really like homework, and the fewer forms I can send them, the better.
Mhm.
So if we can get some of that paperwork out of the way initially, and then most of it is handled by our conversations with clients, that does a lot of the work for me, as opposed to here's a sheet, you got to fill this out every time you see me. I also don't like to send a lot of forms because I don't want the idea that every time I talk to this guy, he gives me more homework. That's not an association I want with my clients for my coaching.
Right.
Uh,
Okay, I'll check it out.
But don't you
Cool.
want to give them some homework so that they can have something to come to you with for the next session? Like whether it is, whatever it is their goal is, give them something.
yeah. So I want the work that they're doing to be actively leading to the outcomes that they want.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, so the homework there, even though I don't term it as homework, I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
Like, do we want to give them some actions to work on? It's like,
Mhm.
yes, we're going to collaboratively create those actions, but they're going to be things that are moving them towards the outcomes that they want.
Right,
Whereas
not
filling
paperwork.
it, exactly, like filling out a sheet
Yeah.
doesn't often leave someone feeling like, oh, now I can see how this is getting me to where I want to be. Sometimes they may have some real like fantastic aha moments doing those things. But if I can get that to happen in our conversations or as they're kind of thinking of our conversations later on, that's I find to be more powerful than having them sit down and write down something. Also because folks are like, I'm so overwhelmed. Another thing that I have to sit and write down and do feels crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. Mhm.
Cool. Where are we at time-wise? We have about 15 more minutes. The chat box, I have not been keeping up with you, chat box. I'm so sorry. Let's queue up one more conversation for today. This one's from Coach Kate. And then I will grab that link for your demo, Bernadette. But take a second, read this one, and we'll get some responses. So first off, what is your knee-jerk reaction to this kind of comment as a coach? And then second from there, what would be your more empathetic coach-based response or client-centered response, we'll say?
Are you ready? Wait.
I actually had a friend say this to me. Oh,
It's kind of crazy to me because how do you expect to be doing the same thing and expect a change? You're gonna continue to get what you're getting if you're not making a change. So that's,
Jeremy, is that the video for the demo? Because I want to watch it.
Yeah, so I just popped the demo, the link for the demo into the chat box. So feel free to grab that and watch it at your own leisure. And then in terms of the response from Kate, it's like, yeah, that one, Bernadette, kind of is, I think, quite reasonable. But someone else, I think, Jeanette, you were saying like you actually had someone say this to you, and I think most
Yeah.
coaches will have heard, mostly in casual conversation, someone say a very similar sentiment to this, where it's like, I want this thing, but I also don't want the things required to get there, which is, I think, kind of reasonable in terms of like, yeah, not a lot of, as Jeanette and Kimberly shared at the beginning of this call, it's like, not a lot of people want to wake up at 5 in the morning to go to the gym or to meticulously track their macros or do workouts that leave them really sore most of the time. So then the question becomes, if that's the thing that you want, what are you kind of willing to do? I mean, hey, if there was an easy button for a lot of this stuff, I would break that button. I would use that button all the time. An easy button to have clients lined up outside my door, an easy button to film social media. Oh, an easy button to do my taxes. Oof, I would love that. That button would be on just
Well, those things you can hire people for. You can't hire someone to lose your weight. You know what I mean? Like that just
no,
has to
good
but you
point.
can do the next best thing, which is hire a coach, I suppose.
still got to do what the coach tells them to do. And that's what my friend said. She's like, I know that I just need discipline, but I also want to go out and drink and have fun and eat. And, you know, she just knew, and she just knew she wasn't ready
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. I mean, I got that from a client as well, where she was like, well, I'm not going to walk 10 minutes a day. And I'm like, well, you're not going to see any results then. So, you know, if you don't do what's necessary, you're not going to see any results.
Angelique, I see your comment in the chat box. What would you ask? Feel
Yeah,
free to
so
either pop it in the chat box. Oh, good, you
no,
can unmute.
yeah. So I would probably just ask more questions for the fact that if they're just like, I sometimes you gotta have to get a little deeper. It could be that, childhood, they were forced to eat a whole lot of vegetables, and now they're adults and they're like, I don't want to eat that. I just sometimes you have to see exactly, well, why don't you want to, like what's the issue here? So that's what I would just kind of ask him a little bit deeper, because if they're already coming to me, then obviously they want some type of change. And then I would just kind of pull um pull some things out of them to see exactly what's the problem. Does that make sense? It's just you just
It
don't know.
does. Right. And I mean, so this is the thing. I think when you see that comment initially, it's very much like flabbergasted. Like what do you want me to do with this then? If my skill set is to help people to embrace nutritional changes and to embrace movement, and you're saying that you straight up don't want those things, that should be the end of the conversation. And when there are people who are paying you for these things, or they're coming to you seeking advice on this, it's very unlikely that they're going to paint it as black and white, as I'm straight up just not going to do what you tell me. Not those relationships typically don't go very far. But in casual conversation, you may have clients or friends or acquaintances, people who we would call maybe prospective clients, who will share something quite similar to this. They'll say, yeah, like I want the thing that you offer and I want this lifestyle and what it offers, but I'm not willing to do X, Y, and Z. So, Angelique, as you mentioned, it's like the next step here, after you've picked your jaw up the floor, is to ask, what are you willing to do? And then share with them what kind of outcomes would that realistically get them. So if you're not willing to change how you're eating and you're not willing to do any exercise, what are you willing to change? Are there changes that you think are worth making? What outcomes do you think those might lead to? If those things are now more rational in their head or more reasonable, like, yeah, I don't want to really change what I'm eating. It's like, could you eat slightly less of it? Maybe intermittent fasting is actually what you want to do because you're going to eat the exact same way, but we're just going to put it into a compressed time window, which will typically lead to you eating less. Is that what you want to do? Uh, you want to lose weight, but you don't want to exercise? As Kim mentioned in the chat box, like Ozempic and that classification of drugs is becoming more potent and more available all the time. You might get to a place where you can lose weight without necessarily making many modifications to your movement. There are probably more potent versions of that coming down as well. So starting to think of this conversation in terms of what can I support this person who has minimal capacity for change, but they're willing to engage in this conversation. Can I share with them something that I offer that would still be valuable to them in this situation, which is given like a very narrow window, but it only kind of expands when you ask those questions, when you have these conversations with folks. So as much as it's initially kind of like it takes you aback a little bit, it's still worth asking a little bit more to get some clarification and understand, cool, how, if any way, can I support you with this? It's almost better to have these narrow kind of guidelines initially, because as a coach, you'll also probably get a lot of folks who are like, I'm excited to make changes, but they don't realize that either their capacity or tolerance for change right now is actually quite low. So with those people, it'd be like, yeah, here's 20 things that you can work on right now. And they're gung ho and they're ready to do it. But by week 3 or 4, they're like, oh my God, this was terrible. And I actually don't want to do the thing. I would probably almost rather work with a person who's like, here's a list of things that I'm not willing to do. How can you help me? Because with that person, at least I have really clear guidance on what will not be useful and what I might waste my time with and waste their time, more importantly, as opposed to the person who's like, I'm ready, coach. Tell me all the things to do. And then ignores that they have a very demanding job. They have a toddler at home. They're currently training a puppy. They're also selling their house. That might actually be a bigger nightmare. Tamara, I'll give you last word on this one. I saw you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks everyone for your perfect thoughts. So I just want to add that sometimes a strategy is rooted in high expectation or narcissism, a desire like for a wow effect, yeah, rather than a real improvement in quality of life. So the focus on body shape, nor body feelings, like aesthetics, not in experience. That's why probably like anything looks like baby steps forward feels unbearable, even insulting, for example, because deep down, maybe the person is tired of the race. Like they don't want to change anything today. He or she doesn't want to change anything today, not out of laziness, but because they are exhausted, because they still reject small steps, and if they like not enough. So maybe in this case also, it's that example when the person is just pissed off, and because he or she, yeah, doesn't want to make life changes, yeah, that work for like a long-term period, but just want to have a like a gold medal, but it doesn't work like this, especially in nutrition, like sleeping, movement, because it's not about like to be in a shape, yeah. It's about like to be in a good quality living process. So maybe I'm not sure, of course, that this case it's about it, but in my practice also, it's really common when you're just share with your client, like make some changes for add some movement for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just like going forward, take care of yourself. I say, oh no, I would like to, I don't know, like make a treadmill or a HIIT training and then do nothing. And like month by month, year by year. So yeah, sometimes it's a really huge problem, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you highlight there that is incredibly valuable is that level of expectation setting. So does no, I'm not going to change anything really mean change anything, or there's a certain level of change that they believe is required, and they're just not willing to meet that level?
Yeah.
So, or they think that the only place where this change happens is something that is so far beyond their current capacity that they're like, I'm not willing to entertain any change, even though we know that stepwise incremental changes can yield really fantastic results. Uh, Even if they don't necessarily immediately show on the scale or show in pictures or anything in a physical sense, they can see real improvements, which then drives their ability to think, okay, maybe I am willing to make slightly more dramatic changes or significant changes over time. So yeah, there's definitely a level of expectation setting that I would want to explore with that person, whether that is this is a very literal no change, or is this something where no means I'm not willing to run 10K a day because that's what I think is required to make some significant changes in my quality of life or my body. And as we know, that's not necessarily true. Cool. We're up on time for today. Any final thoughts or questions before we sign off?
No. I'll be back.
Yes, I do.
What do
Jeremy,
we
oh,
got?
sorry. It's kind of weird. Sorry, I didn't mean to, speak over somebody.
Oh, no,
I'll let Jeanette finish her thought first, and then Angelique, I'll come back to you.
this
Okay.
was great. I'll probably be back. Thank you
Cool.
for this in general.
No worries. Angelique, what did you have?
Yes. So I just during your the Kickstart coaching, you had put in your email, and I just wanted to make sure I had your correct email, because I need to email you a couple of questions that I know we won't have time to talk about.
Yeah, so email me at procoach@precisionnutrition.com, and then that goes to my inbox.
Okay, that's what I have. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Cool. All right, folks, we'll call it here for today. Thank you for helping with these conversations, being such willing participants to engage, and then we'll touch base probably in next week or the week after. Check the invites. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.